Hello and welcome, guys, to another Reddit Threads video. Today we're going to look into stories posted by people about neighbors who shouldn't be able to see them, phone calls that were never supposed to come back, and moments where someone, suddenly isn't them anymore. These are some disturbing Reddit threads that no one has ever been able to explain. Let's begin with our first story. My neighbor used to peek at me over her fence when I was little. Her fence is 10 feet tall. The post reads as follows: I didn't realize my new customer used to be my neighbor until I pulled into her driveway. The street name had sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it. A few landmarks on the drive over had sparked something in me. Nothing solid though, just a prickling sense of recognition I couldn't place. It only clicked when I actually saw my old childhood home sitting right beside my customer's property. I know it's strange that it took me that long, that I hadn't recognized anything when I put the address into Google Maps. But my uncle moved me out of this quiet neighborhood when I was 6. I barely remembered anything about living on this street or in that house. My girlfriend Ellie said that wasn't quite normal, told me gently that it was probably my brain blocking things out on purpose. I sat gripping the steering wheel long after I'd parked, staring at my childhood home. It backed onto a large woodland area, tall trees looming far above the roof. The bungalow itself looked abandoned, shattered windows, empty bottles scattered across dead yellow grass. Clearly no one had lived there in a long time. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. For a moment I considered leaving, but I'd only started my lawn mowing business a few months ago. I needed the money. This woman was only my third customer so far. She hadn't called like the others. She'd emailed instead, "I'm interested in your service. Every week Sunday work." I replied that Sundays were fine and asked for the address. She sent it, followed by another message: door left open Sundays, money on table, help self to drink, and meal. It struck me as odd that she'd contacted someone who lived an hour away instead of a local business, but she'd promised a generous tip. Still sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, maybe. The emails felt that way. But when I searched my memory for her face, I came up blank. Just another thing lost to my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown, knee-high grass, thick and uneven. The house itself was perfectly normal, a neat 2-story place with a front porch. Well kept enough that the state of the yard felt odd, almost like a choice. I hesitated, wondering if I should knock or just start the job. In the end, I got to work. Part of me didn't want to meet her yet. I was delaying it. I couldn't explain why. As I mowed, my gaze kept drifting to the fence separating her property from my old home. It was enormous, easily 10 feet tall. I couldn't believe something like that had been approved in a quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, pressure built behind my eyes. The sensation of a memory forcing its way up, while something inside me resisted just as hard. The effort made my head throb. Then for a split second I remembered hair. Long black strands spilling down the fence from the other side, tangled and thin, draped over the timber, clinging to the wood, hanging there like a ragged curtain. I'd frozen on my cheap plastic tricycle. One of the back wheels was missing, so I had to balance my weight just right to keep it upright. It's strange, the useless little details that scramble back when everything else is lost. The hair shifted and slowly, above the lip of the fence, a pale forehead rose. There were eyes, white and cloudy. I only saw them for a moment, but I knew immediately who they were peeking down at. Me. Only me. Then there had been a sound behind me, maybe a voice, maybe someone calling my name. The eyes vanished. The forehead sank out of sight. The hair slid upward, strand by strand, slithering back over the fence until there was nothing left at all. Cold washed through my body. I tightened my grip on the mower handle and focused on the lines of grass ahead of me. I didn't look at the fence again. Surely it had just been my imagination, something I'd invented out of boredom. No one could peer over a 10-foot-tall fence unless they were standing on stilts or balancing on some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone climb that high just to look at a child playing in their backyard? It was too strange to take seriously, too absurd. And yet an unease bloomed low in my chest and refused to settle. Because that image, hair spilling over the fence, eyes watching, was suddenly one of the clearest memories I had from that house, from that time. Clearer than anything else I could recall in over a decade. I shook my head, forced the image away, and got back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked respectable again. I packed my equipment back into my uncle's van. Then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waited a bit. She did say to let myself in, but it felt wrong to just waltz into a stranger's house. I waited another few minutes before finally reaching for the handle and stepping inside. "Ms. Ramona, are you home?" I called out, remembering her name from her email address. One of the first things I noticed was the ceiling. It was unusually high. It made the space feel wide and open, almost cavernous. It also made it incredibly cold inside. Goosebumps rose over my arms. Most of the ground floor was open plan, so I spotted the kitchen right away, where a wooden table sat by the counter. There was money laid out neatly on top of it. Beside it, a glass jug filled with what looked like lemonade, ice cubes floating inside, a clean glass, a sandwich on a plate. She'd said to help myself. Still, I hesitated. I felt silly to be cautious, but I hadn't even met her. I picked up the money and nearly choked when I counted it. Four $50 notes. I only charged $60. She'd mentioned a tip, sure, but this was excessive. What if she was elderly? What if she'd miscounted? I took 100 and left the other 100 on the table, just in case. That was when I heard something upstairs. A wheeze, wet and uneven, like air being dragged through damaged lungs. After that, two sharp creaks snapped through the house in quick succession, floorboards protesting under sudden weight. My body went rigid. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the staircase. "Hello." My voice rang too loud in the open space. "Ms. Ramona?" No answer. I edged closer to the stairs despite myself, my heart beginning to pound. The noises replayed in my head. What had made them? Had she fallen? Was she hurt? If she was elderly, I told myself I should check. That was the decent thing to do. But another part of me was screaming to leave. The feeling was sudden and absolute, like stepping into a place you were never meant to enter, like bait. After a moment, I turned back to the table. I picked up the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands clumsy and shaking, and then I got out. When I drove home, I sat in the van for a long time with the engine off. The sandwich rested on the passenger seat. Eventually, I opened the bread. Inside was butter and raw, red meat. I swallowed, then noticed something else threaded through it. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled. A single hair slid free. Dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened, but left out the part about my strange memory. Ellie laughed. "You're scared of a little old granny?" "I don't know if she's a granny," I said. "I've never met this woman. She could be a man for all I know." "Are you sure?" "You said she was your old neighbor," she said, her eyes soft but insistent, that gentle look she always got when she was trying to probe something about my childhood. "Are you sure you don't remember anything?" That long black hair entered my mind again. At that moment, I remembered something else. I remembered a single strand had caught in the fence, drifting in the breeze until it detached and floated down to my 6-year-old self. I remembered plucking it from the air and then playing with it carefully so it wouldn't snap. I had wrapped it around my arm, amazed I could coil almost the entire length up my little forearm, like linen around an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head at Ellie's question and told her about the inedible sandwich instead. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. "The poor woman probably has dementia." A week later, I went back. I didn't want to, but Ellie had made me realize I was being ridiculous, and the money mattered. If we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's house, we needed it. My stomach churned the whole drive. Before I even started the mower, my eyes went to the fence again. I remembered long, curling fingers reaching over the top, and once more, I remembered seeing half a face peering down at me, just eyes and a forehead visible above the timber, watching. I reluctantly went inside to collect my payment. This time, she'd left $300 on the table. Beside it, a note, the handwriting thin and spidery, "Take all money. Why no drink?" My gaze drifted to the jug of lemonade. I filled a glass, intending to pour half of it down the sink to make it look like I'd had some. Instead, for some reason I couldn't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet, good. After that, the memories returned, stronger than ever. I had a dream that night, a dream about food being thrown over an enormous fence. Sometimes it was a roast chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices sloshing against the sides. Other times it was a whole chicken, raw, feathers still clinging to pale skin. Sometimes it was fresh fruit in a cracked plastic container. Other times it was rotting apples and a thick slab of heavy, red meat. I remembered the hunger. I remembered setting up a blanket over the bushes beside the fence, a small hidden nest where I could crouch and store what I was given. I remembered eating like an animal, devouring whatever was edible before anyone could find me. I remembered my scalp itching constantly. Lice, multiplying, biting, crawling, with no one bothering to stop them. A whole kingdom of parasites living freely in my hair. Then I remembered the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fence and the bushes, where I sat with my back pressed against the timber, rustling the spindly branches. The hand was enormous, but gentle. One long finger brushed the tangled hair out of my face. The itching faded. I stared up and saw nothing but the endless length of a thin, gray arm disappearing over the fence. I remembered wrapping my small hands around that enormous finger and holding tight, crying into it. Then I remembered an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger wriggled gently until I released it, and then the hand vanished. The arm withdrew. When I looked back up, only a faint wisp of dark hair was visible above the fence line. Someone tore the blanket away from my hiding place. They yelled, screamed in disgust. I was sitting on a hoard of food. A lot of it was rotting. There were flies, there were maggots. Hands grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the bushes and away from the massive fence so hard I thought the bone would snap. "Stop!" I screamed. The third time I went back to mow Ramona's lawn, I did not hesitate. Something had begun to clarify itself inside me, like an image slowly coming into focus. And I knew I needed to speak with her. Ramona, finally. I didn't know if the memories were wholly real, but pieces were fitting together now, clicking into place with a quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than I ever had before. And instead of making my head ache, it planted something determined inside me, something that refused to be quiet any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a sweet old granny who babysat me sometimes. Maybe she fed me. Maybe she took care of me. Maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories were able to return, disguised as something else, something not quite real, but threaded through with truth. As I started the lawnmower this time, I didn't look away from the fence. I remembered the humming, a low, steady hum, as I lay hidden in the bushes beside the fence. The yelling in the house always softened when I listened to her hums. I remembered being lifted so high I could see over the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a sturdy tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered biting into the furry flesh, feeling warm blood dribble down my cheeks. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth, high above the ground, watching the stars blink into existence. I remembered running to my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, shaking, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me. "Henry, you get back here right now, you little shit!" she screamed. She caught my arm and wrenched me around. "Mummy, stop!" I sobbed. "Don't hurt me again!" I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something brushing the back of my neck, light and familiar, like long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us, terror carved into her face. I looked up. Then the fingers came. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her, up, up, up. She was screaming as she went, so I called out, "It's okay, Mummy. She's just taking you to see the stars." There was a deafening crunch and her screaming stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Hands closed around me. They were so warm when they lifted me, gentle, careful, cocooning me as I shook and clung to the heat. I rose high enough to see over the roof of my house, just like all those other times. I finally remembered seeing her face. The image was clear now, unblurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale and gaunt, her lips stretched too wide across her skull. But her eyes, they were dark, but they were warm. "Did Mummy like seeing the star?" I asked her. She hummed. My hands shook. I didn't turn the lawnmower off. I walked toward her house on numb legs, the sound of the engine fading into something distant, barely there. The front door was open, as it always was. I climbed the staircase slowly. A low groan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I went. The upper floor was completely open plan, wide and sloping like an expansive attic, and laid out across it was a very tall woman. Her skin was a shade close to gray. Her face had the weathered features of someone much older than me. Her limbs were long and spindly. She lay on her side on a soft floor mat that covered nearly every inch of the space. Her body folded carefully, purposely, as if she had made herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped inside. I dropped to my knees and sobbed before I could stop myself. Terror and grief and everything I had buried for so long rushed through me all at once, crushing and merciless. Fingers reached out, impossibly large, wrapping around me and drawing me gently toward her. I was pulled into warmth, deep and steady, and my shivering slowly began to ease. "You killed her," I sobbed. "You killed her, didn't you?" She hummed softly. "Why? Why did you do that?" I said, the words breaking apart as they left me. She brushed my hair back. My cries thinned into small, broken whimpers. "Why didn't she care about me?" I whispered. "Why did she let me starve? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little kid." Her warmth held. Her breathing stayed slow and even. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a bed. Across from me, seated in an armchair, was a little old lady. Her eyes were distant, as if part of her had wandered somewhere far away and hadn't yet found its way back. Still, they stayed on me, steady and patient. We were still upstairs. The massive mat lay stretched across the floor, unchanged. The bed had been tucked into a small corner of the room, like it had been put there for me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What was that thing?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to something beside me. I followed it and saw a folded note resting on the mattress. I picked it up with shaking hands. I cursed with sighs and hunger. "But I protect, sweet little boy. Cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars, and where she not reach. Lost myself when I took her. But she not hurt you anymore. Forgive me, please." When I drove home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known something horrible happened to my mother, but there were details surrounding the event that deep down I think I never wanted to learn. But I felt stronger now. I was ready. He showed me the pictures first. They were of me as a little boy. My hair was long and scraggly. I wore dirty clothes that were torn at the seams. My body was mapped with bruises and cuts and burn marks. There wasn't much to know in the end, except the fact that my mother was a monster. And when she was found in the woods one day, half-eaten, a case that would quickly be declared as an animal attack, people called it karma after they learned what she did to me. I continued to visit Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a little old granny. I laid down and listened to her hums when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her. But I needed someone to know. Ramona may have been a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to an instinct to protect. When she was dying, I fell asleep holding her large hand. And when I woke up, there was nothing. She was gone. Even though she doesn't live there anymore, even though the house is no longer occupied, I still go back to mow her lawn. And sometimes when the lawn is done, I linger until the night swallows the sky. When I focus on the constellations, it almost feels like I'm rising, slowly, above the roof of the house. Now let's head on to another interesting Reddit story. We were prank calling people, until one of them called back. The post reads as follows. "We were 13 and bored, a dangerous combination when your parents give you a phone with unlimited minutes and let your friends stay the night when they're out of town for the weekend." Jake had already sprawled out and taken ownership of the couch, feet dangling over the armrest and phone in hand, telling us about something funny he found. He was the reason my parents were on the fence of letting me have this sleepover in the first place, and I think he knew it. Claire was sitting on the floor with her back against the coffee table. She was charging her phone and pretending not to listen to Jake, yet she corrected him anytime he got something wrong. Ben sat cross-legged in my dad's recliner. He would laugh at our jokes, just quieter, but he kept checking his phone like he was looking for a reason to leave. Leading up to tonight, Ben was questioning whether he should come at all, and I'd had to give him the friendly nudge to get him out of his comfort zone. I was lying on the fluffy carpet, staring up at the ceiling fan and trying to move my head in rhythm with the blades, so it looked like it wasn't moving. We had talked a lot about how rowdy and fun it was going to be. It was only about 8 p.m., and the boredom had already taken over. Jake let out a dramatic sigh. So, are we just going to lay around bored all night, or are we going to try and have some actual fun? Claire's pre-answer eye roll made me chuckle under my breath. Any ideas or just complaints? I don't know anything at this point. Jake sat there for a few seconds before his eyes lit up. How about we call some people? Claire's eyebrow went up in consideration. I saw Ben adjust in the recliner with a hint of hesitancy in his eyes. I happened to like the idea. Yeah, let's do it. Jake swiftly went into action, sitting on the edge of the couch cushion and pulling out his phone. He quickly dialed a number, put it on speaker, and set it on the coffee table. It rang a couple of times until, hello? Jake answers quickly. Hi, is your refrigerator running? Ha ha, very funny. You kids have a good night and stay out of trouble. They hang up. Claire looked at Jake in disappointment. Really, dude? Do you think no one has heard that before? He shrugs and slides the phone to her. You try it then. Claire obliges, dialing a new number without hesitation. Hello. She straightened her posture. Yes, we are performing a survey, and we were wondering on a scale from 1 to 10, how likely are you to fight a goose? I had to cover my mouth to avoid laughing out loud while Jake jumped in for a follow-up. But it's important to know that the goose does know karate. There was a beat of silence. Then the man on the other line broke out in a guttural laugh and then quickly answered in a serious tone, 10! I would fuck up that goose! The four of us erupted into laughter. Even Ben laughed louder than I had heard all night. We hung up still laughing. The calls went on from there. We had found a few more laughs with the other line, as well as some angry old women. But one number changed all of that. When we called, there wasn't anything special about the number or the way it rang, but it went to voicemail. Again, nothing abnormal. We had a few other calls that went to voicemail, so we left them goofy little messages. For this one, Jake said, Hey, this Todd at the pet store. Did you want the hamster or the iguana? We chuckled at the silliness of the message and went to put in a new number. Before we could, though, the number we had just called attempted to call us back. I say attempted because it only rang for a split second, and then another notification. One new voicemail. We looked at each other with a mix of intrigue and confusion. Jake unlocked his phone and played it for all of us. It was a woman. Her voice was kind of breathy and shy. She sounded young, but definitely older than us. Hey, this Todd at the pet store. Did you want the hamster or the iguana? This was followed with a few seconds of silence. Well, almost silence. There was a faint hiss in the background, not exactly static, just air. And then suddenly the message cut off. Jake doesn't smile. Ben is silent. Claire decided to play it back. I just sat there feeling like the ceiling fan had just gotten louder. Jake was the one to break the silence. Well, that was odd. Claire just nodded in agreement while wearing a thoughtful expression, as if she was sitting there trying to make sense of why the message seemed so disturbing. Ben had adjusted so that he was now sitting with his arms wrapped around his knees. He just moved his eyes between each of us, waiting for someone to provide reasoning. I'm going to call them back, Jake blurted out before dialing the number back. None of us objected out loud. Again, the line rang a few times and went to voicemail. Very funny. But really, did you order the hamster or the iguana? Jake chuckled about the message he had just left, but we all could see the slightest change in his confidence and tone. He lightly tossed the phone on the coffee table, and we all watched the phone intently. Another time, the phone rang for a split second and then an immediate voicemail notification. Jake pulls it up and plays it. This time there's a few seconds of silence before she speaks. You sound different when you're nervous. More silence follows. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Then a sudden burst of wind against the microphone. A thud. Another. Something screeching against a wood floor. That's when the message was cut out. Silence devoured the room once again. My eyebrows shot up when another voicemail notification came across Jake's phone. Without hesitation, Jake plays the new message. It was short and stern this time. Don't call back this time. As soon as the message ended, Jake twitched his head back and lifted an eyebrow, almost like he was offended. Okay, well now we have to call back. Jake reaches for the phone, but Claire reaches a hand out to stop him. Wait, her voice was serious. Wait for what? Jake rebutted. It's just phone calls back and forth. Ben spoke up for the first time. Claire's right, I don't like it. Oh, don't be such a bitch, Ben. They can't come crawling through the phone. Jake dials the number once more. Ring, 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 voicemail. How about you tell us what to do, lady? We'll call you all we want, and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. He throws the phone off to the side of the couch. There, now we can be done. Split-second ring of Jake's phone. Immediate voicemail. Jake rolls his eyes as he plays it. This time the sound is muffled, like they're holding the phone outside and it's windy or they're standing in front of a fan. Then faintly, oh, don't be such a bitch, Ben. A pause. They can't come crawling through the phone. Ben immediately jumped out of the chair and paced the living room. We watched as tears pooled in his eyes. What the hell, Jake? Now they know my name. Oh, this doesn't feel good. He turned to Jake and showed the most emotion I'd ever seen him have. This doesn't feel right. Claire went over to try and ease Ben. She grabs Ben's inhaler and hands it to him. She guided Ben to the kitchen table and sent a death glare back at Jake. He raised his hands in surrender. What the hell did I do? Jake and I sat in silence for a minute or two, listening as Claire attempted to calm Ben down. Jake jerked his head over to me. Hey, what if we try to answer the call? I looked at him with confusion. They call for that split second before they leave a voicemail. What if we could answer before it goes to voicemail? Maybe we could catch them off guard and they'll fuck off. I don't know, Jake. I think we should probably just let it be. Don't you start wussing out on me, too. I just shook my head and played thumb war with myself in my lap, pretending I don't notice Jake calling the number back. Okay, seriously, who is this? If this is a joke, it's not funny anymore. Just tell us how you did that. Jake hung up the phone but kept his thumbs ready to try and answer the call. It rings and he slammed his thumb down on the screen, aiming for the green button. Fuck, I missed it. Voicemail notification. He plays the message. The girl's voice was more gravely, more stern, more pissed off. Do not try to do that. The end of her sentences didn't line up with themselves, as if another voice finished a fraction of a second before the other. Or I will come over there and... A loud, high-pitched screech comes through the speaker. Jake dropped the phone to the ground. It was so unbelievably loud and piercing that Jake and I had to cover our ears. I looked to the kitchen. Claire and Ben were covering their ears as well. The message ended. As soon as it ended, Jake immediately got up and went to the garage. I went to follow him, but he was in and out and bumped me into the wall as he stomped back to the living room with one of my dad's hammers in hand. With no hesitation, he began hammering his phone. The screen spiderwebbed. The battery popped loose. He hammered until only shard remained. The rest of the night, we said very little to each other. I could tell everyone wanted to go home, but no one wanted to explain why to their parents, and none of them were going to walk home in the middle of the night. I was thankful because that would have left me home completely alone. The years passed. We grew apart. I'm not even sure what all of them are doing now. For me, I'm 32 now. I have a wife, 2 beautiful daughters, but to this day, every unknown number that comes across my phone makes me flinch and grit my teeth for a split second. That brings us to a couple days ago. I saw I had gotten a missed call and a voicemail during one of my morning meetings at work. Reluctantly, I checked the message. That familiar faint hiss came through the speaker. And then, that original, shy voice. You sound different when you're older. And those were two disturbing Reddit threads that still don't have clear explanations. Stories like these are the reason people keep coming back to Reddit, because sometimes the things people share there feel a little too real. Maybe they're just strange coincidences. Maybe someone is exaggerating the truth. Or maybe some of these stories really did happen exactly the way they were written. Either way, the question is the same. Which story disturbed you the most? Let me know in the comments.